Arrested for helping G20 protesters through Twitter. So this is from October the 5th. It happened during the G20 protests. A self-described New York City anarchist has been accused of tweeting the location of police officers to protesters trying to evade them during the G20 Economic Summit in Pittsburgh. Pennsylvania State Police arrested Elliot Madison, alleging he used Twitter to direct the movement of protesters and inform them about law enforcement actions at last month's summit. The New York Post reported the arrest on Saturday. Court papers filed by Madison's attorney say FBI agents executed a search warrant at the 41-year-old's Queens home on Thursday. They seized computers, political writings, and anarchist literature. Madison faces charges including hindering prosecution. His attorney didn't immediately return a call requesting comment Saturday, but then later he did, and this was on Democracy Now! Where I saw this. It says, his attorney Martin Stoller said he and a friend were part of a communications network among people protesting the G20. There's absolutely nothing that he's done that should subject him to any criminal liability. Now, regarding this matter, we have this article from October 7th from the Oregonian by Amy Goodman titled, "Watch What You Tweet." And it says, a social worker from New York City was arrested last week while in Pittsburgh for the G20 protests and subjected to an FBI raid this week at home, all for using Twitter. Elliot Madison faces charges of hindering apprehension or prosecution, criminal use of a communication facility, and possession of instruments of crime. He was posting to a Twitter feed, or tweeting as it is called, publicly available information about police activities around the G20 protests, including information about where police had issued orders to disperse. While alerting people to public information may not seem to be an arrestable offense, be forewarned, many people have been arrested for the same crime. In Iran, that is. Last June 20th, as Iranians protested against the conduct and results of their national election, President Barack Obama said in a statement, "The universal rights to assembly and free speech must be respected, and the United States stands with all who seek to exercise those rights." His statement was released in English, Farsi, and Arabic and posted on the White House's very own Twitter feed. His tweet read, "We call on the Iranian government to stop all violent and unjust actions against its own people." U.S. Senators Charles Schumer and Lindsey Graham wrote to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton urging her to pressure European nations to restrict sales of eavesdropping technology to Iran. They wrote, "Following recent elections, the Iranian government has used a new communications monitoring center to interfere with and suppress internet and cell phone communications as part of its efforts to crack down on Iranian citizens peacefully demonstrating, including voice calls, emails, text messaging, instant messages, and web traffic, as well as posts to social networking sites such as Twitter, MySpace, and Facebook." The U.S. State Department, impressed with the importance of Twitter to Iranian protests, asked Twitter to delay system maintenance that might have interrupted the service during the Iranian protests. While Madison optimistically mused, "I'm expecting the State Department will come out and support us also," his lawyer, respected civil rights attorney Martin Stoller, said, "This is just unbelievable. It is the thinnest, silliest case that I've ever seen. It tends to criminalize support services for people who are involved in lawful protest activity. And it's just shocking that somebody could be arrested for essentially walking next to somebody and saying, 'Hey, don't go down that street because the police have issued an order to disperse. Stay away from there.'" Madison, his wife, and housemates were roused from sleep during the weekend when the Joint Terrorism Task Force swept into their house, handcuffing them for hours, searching the house, and removing computers and other property from everyone in the house. Madison said the FBI for 16 hours proceeded to take everything, from plush toys to kitchen magnets, and lots of books. They took Curious George stuffed animals. Rather than encourage and support the use of distributed, decentralized social networks to strengthen our democracy and dissent, remember the Obama campaign itself relied extensively on these online and mobile tools, the government seems headed in the opposite direction. Los Angeles Police Chief William Bratton recently won acclaim in the annual meeting of the Major Cities Chief Association, a professional organization of police executives representing 63 of the largest cities in the United States and Canada. Bratton has launched iWatch LA, described as a community awareness program created to educate the public about behaviors and activities that may have a connection to terrorism. The iWatch program, despite Bratton's assertion otherwise, is about spying on your neighbors and turning them into the police. One Iranian Twitterer for the virtual news hub Tehran Bureau recalled the June protests in an essay. An officer spoke to us through a loudspeaker. Disperse, this is your last warning. The sight of them made my knees tremble, but the wave pushed on and so I went along. He was beaten, bloodied, arrested, and held for 20 days. While Elliot Madison was not physically harmed, his legal battles are just beginning, and his case could prove central to the future of free speech in the mobile digital age. It is time for the digital censors here in the U.S. to disperse. Okay, now across the pond, as they say in the UK, we have this article from The Telegraph on October 7th. Snoopers could win £1,000 in prizes for monitoring CCTV cameras on the Internet. This is by Murray Wardrop. The new scheme, called Internet Eyes, involves web users scouring CCTV cameras installed in shops, businesses, and town centers across Britain looking for offenders. The camera's owners will be charged a fee for putting live footage from their cameras online, while members of the public who help catch criminals can win cash prizes. The project will be trialed in Stratford-upon-Avon, works next month, but the consortium behind the idea hopes that it will eventually attract a global audience of viewers monitoring Britain's 4.2 million security cameras. However, it has already provoked criticism from civil liberties campaigners who claim that it will create a snooper's paradise and erode people's privacy. Internet Eyes is being promoted as a game in which players collect points by watching the cameras and clicking a button every time they see something suspicious. An SMS or text message along with a still image of the alleged crime is sent to whoever controls the camera, who then decides whether or not to take action. The camera controller will send a feedback email back to the player indicating whether a crime has taken place. Players are awarded 1 point for spotting a suspected crime and 3 points if they see someone committing an actual crime. They also lose points if the camera operator rules the alert was not a crime. Players who help catch the most criminals each month will win prizes up to £1,000. In economic news, we have this story from October 5th in the New York Times. Report on bailouts says Treasury misled public. This was written by Louise Story. The Inspector General who oversees the government's bailout of the banking system is criticizing the Treasury Department for some misleading public statements last fall and raising the possibility that it had unfairly dispersed the money to the biggest banks. A Treasury official made incorrect statements about the health of the nation's biggest banks, even as the government was doling out billions of dollars in aid, according to a report on the Troubled Asset Relief Program to be released on Monday by the Special Inspector General Neil M. Barofsky. The report also provides new insight into the way the Treasury allocated billions of dollars to 9 of Wall Street's largest players. The report says that Bank of America appeared to qualify for more aid earlier under the government plan. That assertion adds another element of intrigue to continuing investigations of the bank's merger with Merrill Lynch and the role that regulators played in the deal, even as Merrill's condition deteriorated. The bailout formula called for banks to get an amount equal to as much as 3% of their risk-weighted assets, with aid capped at $25 billion for each institution, according to the report. By size, Citigroup, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Bank of America could have qualified for more, and the first two received $25 billion. But Bank of America was given only $15 billion in October, since Merrill Lynch was earmarked for $10 billion. The two companies agreed to a merger, though their deal had not yet been approved by regulators or shareholders. Bank of America ultimately received Merrill's $10 billion in January, as well as $20 billion in additional bailout funds. But if the bank had not been involved in the Merrill deal, it would probably have received $25 billion at the outset, as did Citigroup and J.P. Morgan. Another company in the process of a merger was not treated the same. Wells Fargo was acquiring Wachovia, and it received both companies' money at the start, according to the Inspector General. Mr. Barofsky's office also says that regulators were wrong to tell the public last year that the earliest bailout recipients were all healthy. And then we have this article from the USA Today on October 8th by Pallavi Gorgoy. 34 banks don't pay their quarterly TARP dividends.